For centuries, we've had words like this to describe a certain kind of person. Someone who's maybe a bit thoughtful, a little sad, often creative. But what if this temperament, this melancholy, is way more than just a moody disposition? What if its roots go all the way back to the very beginnings of medicine?
So, what is really going on with the melancholic type? Is it just a quirky personality, or is there something profound happening deep inside the brain? Well, today we're going to go on a journey from ancient myth all the way to modern neuroscience to find out.
And our story starts a long, long time ago, over 2,000 years in fact, with an idea that was fascinating and, as you're about to see, maybe a little more accurate than we thought.
Way back in ancient Greece, you had these brilliant physicians, guys like Hippocrates and later Galen. They came up with this theory that our personalities were basically governed by 4 fluids in our bodies, which they called humors. And if you had too much of one, well, that would shape your entire personality.
And for the melancholic person, the culprit was supposedly an excess of this mysterious fluid they called black bile. They linked it to the earth, cold and dry, and they believed it was what made a person so thoughtful, creative, and also prone to sadness.
For hundreds of years, science pretty much dismissed black bile as total fantasy. Nobody could find this stuff in a living person. But here's where the story takes a crazy turn. What if those ancient doctors were actually seeing something real, but they just didn't have the words or the science to explain it?
And this is where it gets wild. Some modern theories suggest that what the ancient physicians were seeing in their autopsies, this black bile, might have actually been the decomposed core of the adrenal glands. The very glands that pump out our stress hormones. So, without even knowing it, they may have made a direct link between a melancholic personality and the body's stress response system.
Okay, let's jump forward a couple thousand years to the 20th century. A Nobel Prize-winning scientist is about to discover a physical basis for this temperament, not in some mythical fluid, but in the nervous system itself.
You've probably heard of Ivan Pavlov and his dogs. Well, while he was doing his famous experiments, he noticed that some of his animals just couldn't handle intense situations. They got overwhelmed really easily. He called their nervous system the weak type, and he saw a direct parallel to that ancient melancholic temperament.
Now, this is absolutely crucial. The word weak is so misleading. Pavlov didn't mean defective or broken, not at all. What he meant was highly sensitive. Their nervous system has a low threshold for stimulation, meaning it feels things much more intensely than a so-called strong system does.
So, what happens when this supersensitive system gets hit with too much noise, too much stress, too much anything? Pavlov found this incredible built-in safety feature he called protective inhibition. Basically, when things get too intense, the brain starts to power down the response to protect its own cells from burning out.
The best way to think about it is like a fuse box in your brain. If there's a huge electrical surge of stimulation, a fuse blows. You suddenly feel exhausted, withdrawn, maybe even unable to think straight. That's not a failure. That's your brain saving the whole system from getting fried. It's a feature, not a bug.
Okay, so Pavlov gave us the hardware, this sensitive nervous system. Next, a psychologist named Eysenck came along and gave us a map of the wiring, showing us exactly how this plays out in the brain.
Eysenck created this really elegant model with 2 main personality dials, extroversion versus introversion, and emotional stability versus, what he called neuroticism. And if you look at the chart, where does the melancholic land? Squarely in the box for introversion and high neuroticism.
So what does that actually mean, biologically speaking? Let's start with introversion. According to Eysenck, it's got nothing to do with being shy. It's all about how aroused your brain is naturally. So, introverts are basically born with the brain's volume knob already turned way up. There's this part of the brainstem, the ARAS, that's naturally humming at a higher level. Because they're already so stimulated internally, they seek out quiet to avoid getting overwhelmed. Extroverts, they're the opposite. Their volume knob is set lower, so they seek out parties and loud music to turn it up to a comfortable level.
Now for that second piece of the puzzle, neuroticism. And again, let's be really clear, this isn't a character flaw or a sign of craziness. Biologically, it just means you have a more reactive limbic system. That's the emotional powerhouse of your brain. So if you're high in neuroticism, you don't just feel things. Your system reacts to emotional triggers faster, the feeling is stronger, and it sticks around for longer. So let's put these 2 big ideas together. You take Pavlov's highly sensitive nervous system and you combine it with Eysenck's emotionally reactive brain. What do you get? You get the core lived experience of being melancholic.
And this creates what I call the melancholic paradox. On one hand, you have this incredible capacity to feel everything so deeply, this high emotional reactivity. But on the other hand, you have very low behavioral endurance. You get worn out by intense experiences and stimulation so quickly.
And when you're living with that paradox, a few things naturally follow. You tend to think things through very deeply, sometimes to the point of rumination, because acting can be exhausting. You develop a cautious, sometimes pessimistic outlook, because your brain is trying to avoid those overwhelming shocks. And of course, you crave quiet, calm environments where your system can just breathe.
So you see, that tendency to spot what might go wrong isn't a decision to be negative. It's an automatic, built-in defense strategy. Your brain is working overtime to protect its highly sensitive system from the pain and exhaustion of unexpected, intense events. It's a survival tactic.
So, after all this science, what's the big takeaway? Especially if you're listening to this and thinking, wow, that sounds a lot like me.
The single most important thing to understand is this. You are not broken. You are not flawed. Your nervous system isn't weak in a bad way. It's a finely tuned precision instrument, designed to pick up on all the subtle details and frequencies that most other people miss completely. And that high sensitivity? It's the source of some incredible gifts. It's what fuels deep empathy, powerful artistic impulses, a rich inner life, and an amazing ability to see nuances and details that are totally invisible to less sensitive systems.
And here's the final piece of wisdom. Your low endurance isn't a weakness you have to fix. It is simply the price you pay for the strength of your sensitivity. The exact same wiring that allows you to experience profound beauty also means you need to recharge. So you have to respect your inner fuse box. Understand that your need for recovery isn't a failure. It's what protects your greatest gifts.